I'm here with Pete Breen, former ITM Cup player and current coach of the Wallaroos, the Australian women's team, and the Melbourne Storm, and also founder of Rugby Bricks. Pete, cheers for jumping on.
No problem at all. Really looking forward to having a chat and yeah, love podcasts. So excited to get through it.
Cheers, yeah, I really enjoy your one. So outwork, outlearn the Rugby Bricks mantra. Is that something that has kind of been with you for a while? Did you have that mindset as a player?
I certainly did because I definitely wasn't the quickest, the strongest, so I had to be really creative with um, getting. I actually the reason why it really came about is I missed out on the team I was going for 3 years in a row. So Otago. I was in the academy. My mates were getting into the team. You sort of measure yourself off your environment. So I was felt like I was getting left behind, and it was more just a case of, well, I've got to get better. I've got to outwork people here. A couple of other mates were making decisions. This is too hard. I'm going to go off and do something else. But I was like, nah, stay in it, and finally got in. And I guess if you're not just an absolute genetic freak who gets picked straight away, having the mantra of outwork and outlearn is a really good thing. So, especially with goal kicking, it aligns really well with rugby bricks. So, hence why, yeah, we put it on the wristbands and really stand by it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So when you were trying to break into that Otago team, you were playing club rugby, was that it?
Yeah, so club rugby in Dunedin was in the academy, in and out of trainings, and I guess looking back on it now, like I wasn't good enough, but I probably just didn't understand what I was missing. Like I wasn't exposed to the next level, and playing number 10 in New Zealand is also a really hard gig. There's a lot of seriously talented people around, so yeah, just had to brush up on my goal kicking, make sure that that was right. Had to learn how to be more of an attacking threat. So, and I picked up rugby sort of a little bit later than most people. So, yeah, just had to figure out a way to actually be at the standard they needed me to be at.
Nice one. And then how did you work on your attacking game? Did you kind of watch others around you? Did you ask for advice or how'd you go about that?
Yeah, I asked a lot of people. The light bulb moment for me. So Tony Brown, the coach at the time, he coaches Japan. He's the coach of the Highlanders. He was coaching us with Otago, and he gave me the really good advice of whenever you're at 10, you're either passing fast or running fast. So there's no in between. Like I don't want you to try and be clever. It's you've made a decision to move the ball quick or you're attacking fast. And I think that was really good for me because then all of a sudden you're not doing anything sort of slow or guessing, or you see a lot of players dancing or just a little bit unsure. So as soon as I tried to take that into the game, all of a sudden the 30, 40 times you are touching the ball, you're really fast and electric. Um, and that really helped me. It was a game changer.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. It kind of sounds like you're not thinking too much either. Like you're not spending too much time thinking about the different options. You're just going.
Yeah, and I think the common phrase is just play what's in front of you, and it's not very good advice for young players because yes, once you've had a bit of a career, you're sort of a little bit later, you're 26 to 30 years of age, you've seen a lot of pitches, but when you're trying to contribute and help the team and earn your jersey, you kind of just want a job to do. And what that gave me was really clear tasks that he was watching for and I could watch for and really measure whether I was doing that effectively or not. Um, Whereas what I was doing was trying to be right 100% of the time, all the time, every situation, without actually doing anything with real purpose or energy. And when I brought that in, the other cool thing that happens is when you run fast, you break the line, you break tackles, you create more offloads because you're more of a threat, and you create more opportunities for other people. So that's definitely one thing that I've been passing on to every player I've been coaching.
Nice. And did you take on some of the other kind of styles or mantras from Tony Brown, like a pretty good guy to learn under for your coaching now?
Yeah, he probably made me more aware of. what what the impact I was having on other players around me, like especially when passing to a forward pod, like how can you give them the best opportunity to be successful off you, in the fast transfer spiral. He was seriously organised with his coaching players 1 through to 15. Like we all had really clear tasks, just like I explained about my job at 10 with the kicking game, passing game, running game. Every player he coached, and why it was so enjoyable is we all knew the exact task. It wasn't just, hey, Pete, go and play well, because that's really hard to know what to do and tick off and, get the positive snowball rolling. So definitely have taken that into my coaching now and just being organized players 1 through to 15.
Yeah. Do you think that when players know kind of three or four clear points that it allows them to focus in on that and then not get overwhelmed by, there's so much going on in the game of rugby and there's so much that you can concentrate on?
Absolutely. And with coaching the woman, especially, generally a lot of overthinking and questioning and self doubt. And in the men's game, absolutely as well. But I probably saw more of it in the women's game, where if I just say to a player, just want you to really be engaged and go out there and play well and just be involved with everything, there's nothing measurable in those statements. Whereas if I can tell a player on your carries, like, let's see if we can break the first tackle, keep a leg alive, and your job is just to give me 2 meters on every carry post contact. And now all of a sudden they can achieve that, and then the positive snowball of playing. And the good thing that happens is when we feel like we're contributing, we feel really good about things. And you just got to give a player, how can you contribute within our game plan? And when you do that, really good things happen.
Yeah, it's awesome. I also coach women, and I found similar things, and also that they ask a lot more questions, which as a coach can be a kind of, I found, a really good thing because it
Yep.
allows you to give more detail. Whereas, like you said, I think for guys you can just kind of give a more general instruction and they'll go and have a crack and feel somewhat comfortable with that. But women want the more detail.
Mm. We had a really amazing discussion with a couple of coaches in America, and it was shown that they did a study with 100 coaches, male coaches coaching in the female environment, and there was something like 300% more questions in the women's game than the men's game. So just knowing that, I think one thing I've definitely tried to bring in is have 3 ways of training. So definitely learning phase, where ask as many questions as you want, walking through it, ask away. And then sort of the execution phase, where if we're doing this drill, I don't mind you sort of questioning and asking the odd question, but generally we want to execute. And then game focus. So you can't ask questions. In this block and training, there's no time for questions, just execute. We'll look at it on video later. So I think setting the girls up really of what the vibe for the block was really did help, because then they had to get into the mindset of that.
Yeah, it's really good. And have you found any other kind of differences in the women's game versus the men's game? So like around kicking, women don't kick the ball as far as men, and kicking is such a big part of rugby today. So as an attack coach, have you kind of had any different ideas with coaching the women's game?
Yeah, in general, it's definitely behind. Like we can think about most of the men's game and people that can dominate a game of rugby with their boot, like Owen Farrell, Johnny Sexton, Carter did it for years. Like they can literally dominate a game. There's not too many people, maybe Emily Scarrett for England, who's a serious kicker of the ball that can really dominate. I think it's coming. Like I've been so impressed in the last couple of years just with the development that I've seen with kicking, and just the strategies behind it, all the rest of it. Very organized, which is cool. Um, the one thing that I definitely noticed just mechanically is when we train people to kick, male or female, generally we start really small and just that little knee flick drill back and forth, sort of 10 meters. And if that's all you've ever done, all you end up doing is being really frontal with your technique. So you just knee flick, and then when I tell you to kick it further, you knee flick harder, and everything's just out the front. the biggest wins that I've had with the girls is taking the ball out of it and just showing them what a full range of backswing looks like. So big glute extension, you really feel your butt really active, your knees nice and high out the back, and your foot's up about hip height. So now all of a sudden we can store energy behind the ball to then put through the ball. So that's where I've definitely got the biggest wins with the girls. And just to wrap up on that, like one really good example, Georgia Cormack, who I work with, 5'2", 55 kilos halfback. Like she is a small girl, but because she's learned how to use her body, she's banging them over from 40 now with a full technique. So the more we see of that, like the more the game's going to improve.
Wow. Yeah. And so it really isn't about the size or like size of people when it comes to distance on kick. It's technique and then somewhat power and strength in the legs.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is definitely more about technique and using your hip power as well. So again, if we're just knee flicking, we're not accessing our hip power and our upper body. And um, I suppose generally a boy grows up kicking a ball and kicking his ball as far and as hard as they can, and there probably isn't that with the female. So it's quite foreign to have this 100% power plus 100% technique. It's just taking a little bit longer. Um, but with the other thing is like you think about the amount of rep sides and academies and coaching that the male game has had. Once the female game catches up on that, and we've got 14-year-old girls in academies learning how to kick, like it's just going to explode. There's no issue with kicking power in soccer or AFLW over here. It's because rugby union's behind, probably at least 5 years, and it's just going to take a little while to catch up as a whole.
Yeah, 100%. And you just mentioned soccer there, and I've seen you do some kind of different kicking drills with a soccer ball. So, what's the thinking behind using a soccer ball to help your
Yeah,
rugby
so
kicking?
Yeah, so we use it with the Melbourne Storm. So the boys all do primers for about 10 minutes with the soccer balls before each session. There's two reasons. The first one is when you've got a massive training load like they do with a lot of high run speed meters, their hammies and groins and hip flexors, they've got a big load in the week already. And then coming off game week, if they've had a massive game, like think about a fullback like Ryan Pappenhausen. Like if his legs are already cooked because mid season there's a lot on. So how can we still get you 200 touches in a kicking session without being at full noise and having your full power on? And so just using the soccer balls gives you a lot of touches and a lot of feedback. And we only really do there's when you kick a soccer ball along the ground and make it roll, you use the inside of your foot and sort of push kick it. So that's how a soccer pass. We don't do any of that. We do like a grubber style kick where your foot's up the back of the ball and we're trying to be nice and straight with our contact. And when we do that to each other, the ball gives us feedback straight away. Like we come off the outside, the inside. When you roll the ball straight to your partner, you know that everything's aligned. Your ball drop, your body, your foot. And then we progress, into drop kicks and punting with the soccer ball, and it's just a really good way to spend 10 minutes and get 100 touches straight away. And all the boys just really improved in the first 6 weeks because they were just getting so many touches, so much feedback on from the ball, and their ball drop, everything was great using the soccer ball.
Yeah, nice. And have you found any difference with league and union? So, say, yeah, with coaching those guys, anything technically different with the kickers in league?
AFL has got a big impact over here, and it's quite a tight and tidy technique. So like a kick pass in rugby union, so you're really only needing 60-70% power. You can sort of stay pretty front on. What I find is that when it come to the big kicks, like a big bomb with height and hang time and distance, that the technique wasn't really tight enough to really trust and be really good at. And you noticed in NRL, like the players that are dominating, like Nathan Cleary with his up and unders, they've got a really good 100% kick where they can have huge power, huge follow through. And so that was a good win for us, just being able to actually enjoy the follow through a little bit more, get out of that really tight body over, and actually allow things to get a little bit taller and a little bit more powerful. With the goal kicking, definitely we spent a lot of work going through the 10 pillars and just getting the boys organised on that, because I definitely felt that it was pretty cowboy, just chuck the ball on the tee and see what happens. So we sorted out a lot of the processes there.
Yeah, 100%. I used to watch a little bit of league growing up, but not a whole pile. And I used to find that they didn't really concentrate, or think that they didn't really concentrate at all on kicking. Like in Super League, especially, is
Yeah.
more what I would have been watching. But you look at Union, and it was around the time, say, '03 with Wilkinson and Neil Jenkins, guys like that. Whereas then in league, they used to, yeah, just have a swing at it. And
Yeah. And I think because of in rugby union, like 3 points for a penalty, I think that's probably why in the way we used to see games like 6-9 or 6-0, that's probably why Union put so much effort, and a goal kicker was, the old saying, the first person you write down on the team sheet. Whereas maybe the focus wasn't like that in league because of so. Yeah, the history of it just meant that a lot of the boys were just cowboys like the guys they watched growing up. But I think if you can go up in sixes in rugby league, man, you can get out in front so quick. So yeah, it can have a big impact.
yeah, 100%. And then I thought they kind of had different styles as well. Like JT, Johnson
Yeah,
Thurston used to kind of swing around the corner, and you'd
yeah.
never see that in Union.
No, never. And very unique, very his style. And we all do what we grow up watching. Like I was the first person to grab a low T like Dan Carter, do his run up, like the exact same thing. Did the Johnny Wilkinson hands, like you just do what you see on TV, right?
Mm.
And that's why I'm such a big fan of kids and people wanting to work on their goal kicking. Like have favorite players because you learn so much about goal kicking just by trying to imitate the pros.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a really good way for players to learn as well. Just in any part of the game, to just watch your favorite players and then try and recreate or replicate what they're doing.
Absolutely, yeah. Big fan of it. And there's so many good examples now with goal kicking. Like the level and standard has just really improved. I mean, it's always been good, but man, there's just so many more good kickers these days.
Yeah. And have you always wanted to be a coach, say back when you were playing? Was it something that you thought you were going to do after you retired?
I was always very interested in that side of the game. It probably wasn't more I want to coach. I just love the tactics and game driving and what's the game plan. That was one of the big things from Tony that I learned is it's our plan versus their plan, and whoever can execute it best on the day wins the game. Like it's not rugby versus rugby. We need to decide as a team what we want to be best at, like what are the key areas. And with the Highlanders and Otago playing under the roof at Forsyth Bar Stadium, we could have an exceptional kicking game that applied a lot of pressure, and we kicked the ball more than any other team. We had, and it was just our game plan. And I suppose that really was a bit of a light bulb moment that across the game, everyone does the same things like scrum, line out, attack, defense, but you can have really specific parts of the game that your team focuses on, measures, trains, does so much detail on that can help you win a game. And I love that side of it.
Yeah. And how much would you then look at opposition? So with that kind of Tony Brown, I don't know, mindset, it seems like they play the same way. Watching Japan now, like they have a real
Mm.
DNA, and I think was somewhat similar, if I can recall, with the Highlanders. And how much you would you as a coach now look at opposition and tweak how you're playing, or would you really concentrate on yourself and your own attack?
Yeah, if you're not looking at the opposition, you're missing a huge opportunity to get a win. And I'm a big fan of having three players that you look at, manipulate, because genuinely, when you play a team, let's say the All Blacks, like if you can shut down Bowden Barrett, probably Artie Savir and Aaron Smith, if you can just knock them off their game or affect them, not let them just have a free run, that's going to help you a lot. And that's the same in all teams. If the other team has got three key players that if you can affect and put in situations they don't want to be in, bring them into rucks, run them off lines, it has a huge effect. So yeah, it's definitely something that I put time and effort into.
And would you have certain players then to go after them, like say sevens, or just in general keep them down at the bottom of a ruck?
Yeah, it's not really going after people, but I think just as a team, like presenting to the team, here's the three players we're looking at. This is what they like to do, and then that way, when you've got 15 people that can all see something on the run, and if I just do this instead of not doing anything, then that affects the next phase. So definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Just come back to kicking. I saw in a video before you speaking about your focus when you were taking a kick and how it was kind of like razor sharp and people could be shouting or whatever, and you would just have that focus on the ball. Were there ever times where you kind of struggled mentally around kicking?
Yeah, absolutely. So, someone asked me this morning actually via an Instagram message, like when did you feel really confident in your technique? And it was probably when I was 22. So I'd been playing rugby since 16. So if you think about all the kicks I would have taken before then, um, I think you just haven't done enough reps and got enough muscle memory to like be fully 100% confident that you can nail your technique any day of the week. And that was a big thing for me is when I had a huge stint of about 6 months where I literally kicked every day. I just become obsessed with it. And you get to this stage where you just are so confident, a bit like when you watch golfers on the PGA tour, like they are so confident with what they can do with the club and the ball, and you get to that stage after a while, which is really exciting. And I suppose I had some really bad moments. I remember playing this one game for North Otago, actually my hometown, and I was I was putting the ball on tee, and I'd already missed three from three, so I was I was 0 from 3, and I was standing at the back of my mark, had no idea where this ball was going to go. I had no control. My body, didn't know what was going to happen. And that's not a nice feeling. And I always remember that game because it was a bit of a turning point for me. I was like, I've got to put way more work into this because I got no idea what's going to happen. Might
Yeah.
go over or I might completely scuff it or just no control, no process. So, um, yeah, but you talked about then about the crowd shouting, and it's a bit of a locked in state that I work on with players. It's literally having parents, coaches, family members try put yourself off, and you still hear everything, but it's just the ability to say, no, no, my thoughts are the priority. I can still hear you saying your jokes and your banter, but I'm staying in this, and I can execute it, and then I'll come back to you once I've done this job. Um, and it's a really good thing to practice, and I highly recommend everyone doing.
Yeah. And so you found kind of throughout your career that once you had prepared, be it in different areas, that you gained confidence from that in your game.
The biggest gain in confidence I got was from making kicks in games. And that idea of practice kicks are the same as game kicks is completely wrong. And I think that that's from people that have never actually done it. Um, once you know, when you've played in a big game, you've executed, doesn't matter whether you're a goal kicker or not, but as soon as someone's played a super rugby game, they're a super rugby player, and there's something there. Like they walk
Yeah.
around different, like they're capped, they're a pro. They weren't a week before, but once they've done it, now all of a sudden they are, and they can really. And it's the same with, I find, goal kicking is you have to be good enough to get the kicking duties, but then the real magic happens once you've made a few kicks in games and the confidence comes. So you just got to be prepared for that and ready to go when that opportunity comes up.
Yeah. Awesome. And so then with starting Rugby Bricks, when did the idea for that come about?
Mm. So I was actually playing for Northland, so the cap you've got on the Northland Tunny Fast, and I was whenever you play in New Zealand, and I'm sure everywhere else, you have personal development. People come around the unions, so someone from New Zealand Rugby come around and present, and they talk about property and startups and different ideas, and um, so I always wanted I had the idea that I would love to have something on my phone that I could do from anywhere in the world that was like a business, and so something that I could really become obsessed with. And my main upbringing was basketball. That was my favorite sport. I played it all the way up to 16, and then got into rugby. So went to all the camps. Went over to Australia a few times with New Zealand rep sides. Like I was just fully involved with it. And so with that, I was following a lot of content online with basketball. So NBA players, coaches, and what I was seeing was content that was so detailed and so high end, that was really valuable. Like when you do, instead of just here's how to dribble, it's like when you want to do a fadeaway shot with a step back and a crossover to free up this space, this is how the dribbles that you'd take. So what I thought was within rugby, that it was just here's the three key things how to pass, here's the three key things how to tackle. Whereas I knew from my coaching and my experience that there's so much more detail to all this stuff that I wish I'd been taught, which probably why it took me so long to break into that Otago team. So all the stuff that I'd picked up from different coaches, Brownie coming through, other players that I played with, I was like, if I could package this in a way, it could really help a lot of people and a lot of players, and give that high end quality tips that I was seeing in sports like basketball and cricket and golf, because not much was happening in rugby union. So that was the idea. Started in 2017. Didn't know what I was doing. I was literally just on my phone, iMovie, putting something together, and it's just evolved from there. And things have got better. I've got better at presenting and talking, and that's why it all started.
Awesome. And did you ever kind of think about quitting or doubt yourself along the way when, because it's not easy to kind of constantly be putting out the content that you do. Like it's incredible, and it takes a lot of work. But were there ever times at the start where you were thinking, well, maybe there's other easier things to do?
Definitely, yep. And you always get those feelings of like, why am I doing that? Imposter syndrome. Like, does anyone like, am I credible? I'm a player. I'm not a coach. When I started doing it, um, the idea was always to build an audience to then sell kicking tees to. So I knew I wanted to do kicking tees, and so I thought, well, let's build an audience first. Gary V, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of.
Yeah.
Give value first and then ask. So that was definitely a part of it. Is let's build this community, build the content, get people loving it, and then offer a product after that. So that helped me a lot, and I definitely feel like this rugby bricks person is a bit of a character. So I can definitely be Pete and chilled and not the rugby bricks guy. But then I can, when the camera comes on, it's almost I flick into a switch of this is what this person needs to sound like and present like. And so I've got that organized. I had a good conversation with a guy who was starting a podcast, and I said, you need to write down a list of traits that person sounds like in their vibe, so that you know in your head what that character looks like. So I guess that helped as well, as it wasn't, I'm not like that all the time,
Yeah.
barking orders and instructional. But I know what that person should sound like and what I want them to sound like when the camera starts rolling.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important to be able to turn it off and relax and not be turned on all the time.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there just earlier about how you had to improve your speaking and a couple of other things. Were there any intentional things that you did to practice or to get better at certain things, or was it just repetition?
Yeah, I definitely respect the skill set behind communication. I've watched a lot of videos, just about building rapport, timing, some things that are, just different communication styles. Absolutely. So um, I've loved, and the most exciting thing about having rugby bricks is so many things that I look at and explore apply to it. Like I remember watching this thing on YouTube about different thumbnails and how to get more engagement. And the excitement for me to have watched that video and literally within an hour have changed some thumbnails to make it work and more engaging. Like there's always so many of those opportunities. And I suppose just to the speaking points, I follow a lot of like the Joe Rogan podcast. I love comedians, their skill set behind storytelling. There is so much to it when you want to go down the track and learn about it. And there's a lot of people that understand the craft behind it as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's something that I found as well when I started coaching, the importance of being able to communicate and get your message across in kind of as few words as possible, and yeah, kind of for other people to hear it.
Yeah, you can definitely. I feel like with coaching and a lot of the coaching courses, it's pretty blanket coaching and very like teacher background based. And I think not all the time does that work. Like, sometimes when you ask an open question, like, what did you see in that situation and why did you take that? Like, if you just keep asking why and why and why all the time, sometimes the player just wants to know what you thought. Like,
Yeah,
that was shit. Like, a lot of the girls with the Wallaroos were quite surprised with my way and my coaching because they see the rugby bricks guy, whereas a lot of the times they just need that little soft word of, mate, what are you doing? Like, um,
yeah,
so you have to be a human first and then a coach second.
yeah. No, for sure. And what's been your proudest moment with Rugby Bricks?
There's been a lot. Like, sounds a bit cliche, but every time I do see a kicker using a rugby bricks kicking tee, it's a pretty cool moment. And some of the messages that I have got coming through, like, hey Pete, started following you in 2018, I'm 2 years on, like I finally cracked the first 15 or made this rep side or the academy, thanks for all the help. That's pretty special, that's pretty cool. And you asked before about, was there any moments of stopping, like when you're getting those once a week or once a fortnight, that definitely inspires you to keep going and keep pushing out the messaging, and that's going to help someone.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then how do you think of the teas, or how do the teas go from your head to production?
Yeah. So I wanted a New Zealand made kicking tee, and that was a big thing for me. Obviously, the brand of New Zealand rugby and everything that happens there. I didn't want it to be made out of China. And again, going back to storytelling, like, if your product's got a story behind it, then it means more to people, and they can really own it. It's why the message of outwork and outlearn is on the tee, because it adds to the story and why people love the product. So Jason at JTech Plastic in Dunedin, I used to work for a rugby company that did mouth guards. So I knew that he could create a mold and make something out of thermoplastic and do that. So I knew that he could do that. And then went out there, had a chat. Now that the world's developed and people have got 3D printers, so he's able to put in a design and 3D print it, and it ends up like, like your plastic fork you kind of get from a fast food, like that real
Mm.
tinny white plastic. So he prints that out, so we get a kicking tee of that. So I go and kick and use those. They're terrible to kick with, um, but at least it gives you an idea of, if, is this thing going to work? And so that's how it starts. And then we started with the RB88 and did the Vortex range, and now the Wolf kicking tees. So yeah, that's the process.
Cool. And then how did you go about getting them into the pro players? Was it just working on pushing it out to everybody and then they saw it?
Yeah, so asked a couple just to try it out, and then when I'd used it, like when we did the Vortex range, I was like, I can't tell you how stoked I was with it. And me being a kicker for 10 years before this, I knew that when I was putting this ball on the tee, I was like, this is way better than what I thought it was going to be. So I knew that it was an epic product. And then the other thing that I respected is, like, if you've got a tee that you've, and the same thing why a lot of kickers don't change. I was the same. Like, I had the same kicking tee for 6 years, and I remember I lost it one day and went like mental, turned the house upside down to try and
Mm.
find it, because no, like, I've been through a lot with that kicking tee, um, and so I knew that getting pro players to use it, it wasn't so much like there was no money amount or whatever. Like, if they've got a tee that they've kicked, like if you think about All Blacks that have
Yeah,
kicked game winners with that tee, like, no, I'm not changing.
yeah,
So it was more, okay, let's just get this next wave. So the 15 to 20 year olds that are all coming through, I want to get the tees into those players' hands. But it's a lot of the pro players again. Hey, try this out. There's no pressure to use it. Don't have to pay me for it. If you don't use it, no issues. But they used it, they loved the experience, and then they kicked on with it, and been very fortunate. A lot of the players are loving using them.
That's cool. Fair play. And like back 10, 15 years ago, it was kind of all low tees, like with the kind of four kind of prongs or
Yep.
whatever up. And now it's very much so a bit of height, like the higher tees, like the 91 mil and the 114. Do you think there's a better way? Like, say, if somebody is starting out goal kicking, would you recommend a lower or higher tee, or is it personal preference?
It is personal preference, but what I've found is that for a younger kicker who doesn't have much power purely because they're younger, the higher tee is a really enjoyable experience. Like a lot of, I mean, the testimonials that come through are like, I could only kick it from the 22 and now I'm slotting it from 30. That's not because the tee's magical. It's because I think on the higher tee, your foot's up the back of the ball a little bit better, and you've also got access to all that hip power. So it's like kicking the ball out of hand. We can all probably kick the ball out of hand a little bit further than off a tee. And it's because the ball's got a little bit more height on it. We're a bit stronger. Our hips are behind it. We're a bit taller. And that's closer to kicking off the high tees. So that's why I think we've seen the trend change a little bit more. And I kicked off the Dan Carter low green tee for 5 years. And then when this massive sort of moment happened when I was like 2021, I decided, no, I'm getting after goal kicking. I really want to make this a strong part of my game. I changed to a high tee, and there was none of those big rogue misses anymore where the ball just scuffed along the ground. I was only missing just a little bit. So I think it's a lot more enjoyable goal kicking experience off those tees. Um, However, if you grow up sort of like in the UK, it's probably the preference over there, the low kicking tee with that style and that technique, and you build it and you understand it. Like it definitely is a preference.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I do think it is in the UK and Ireland, that lower one, and very few players had that high one, but I think the high tee
Yeah.
is more and more and more people are using them.
And then you think about like what Owen Farrell's doing, right? So every kid just wants to kick the same as him. So that's probably why things are changing. Where it was Johnny before him, Carter as well. We all just do what's on TV. So um, I think that's why it's slowly changing. And who knows, in 20 years we could be all back kicking off the ground. But you just got to go with the times.
Yeah. We've kind of talked about a couple of your different jobs, your two coaching roles, and then rugby bricks as well. How do you balance it all?
There's a bit on at the moment. It's pretty low, like end of the NRL season. No test footy with the Wallaroos. I've actually
Yeah.
finished up with them now, so that's been just such a fantastic time. I absolutely loved what I did with the Wallaroos. I'm a busy person. I love being busy, and what it's forced me to do with rugby bricks. When I first started out, like I was doing everything, like in probably 2019, fulfillment, orders, emails, content, everything, one man band. And then what you learn as you go through is to bring in team members with different skill sets. So what I've been able to do now is set it up so that the team is looking after their own area. And it's definitely something I've had to evolve with and give the responsibilities to other people. So I'm able to focus on Storm or Wallaroos or Rugby Bricks. Now I've got a 4-month-old daughter, so that's made things even busier. So um, yeah, I love being busy. It's a privilege.
Yeah. And how have you found the podcast? I love it, as I mentioned. Yeah, love the episode of Wayne Smith recently, especially.
Thank you. That was a really highlight for me, the Wayne Smith one as well. Similar to yourself, it gives you a lot of energy and a lot of boost when you do them. Like they're so much fun. You learn a lot. It really adds to. I didn't know why my business partner Kale wanted to start one. I said to him, mate, we're so busy. Like we don't have time for this. But I'm so pleased that we did because it just adds to the sort of brand experience. Anytime someone's listening to the Rugby Bricks podcast, like they're a part of our community and learning as well. So we're all about adding value, and a lot of those chats are seriously adding value from people. So I've loved doing it, and again with the skill set of talking and communicating, like it's just been so much fun.
Yeah, yeah. And any plans, like you said, you finished up the Wallaroos, any plans with coaching going forward, or is it like more focused with rugby bricks? Because I did hear in an interview before that the Wallaroos job kind of came up out of the blue, or it was because through rugby bricks that it happened.
I worked with a couple of girls here in Melbourne who just reached out, who played for the Rebels over here, Super W, and then I coached the Rebels 19s boys side, and then from that, just an opportunity came up with the Wallaroos. So what's next? Big focus on rugby bricks probably for the next 6 months. And then looking at different opportunities. To be honest, like I've had a pretty, it's been a challenging couple of years in Melbourne with COVID. Like we've just broken the Guinness World Record for the most amount of days of lockdown.
Oh,
So, not a Guinness World Record you want.
yeah,
So we're just gonna, yeah, hopefully get back to NZ, have a bit of family time, and yeah, whatever comes next, I'm excited for.
nice. And is there anything you know now that you would have liked to have known when you were starting out rugby bricks?
Um, Probably nothing jumps to mind. Like you improve every day with what you're doing, and no, nothing.
Cool. Awesome. Well, hey, thanks so much for your time and thanks for everything that you're doing with Rugby Bricks. As I said, love the podcast, love the content, and yeah, thanks for putting all that out there.
No, I appreciate it. And again, thanks so much for the support, the community, and everyone that listens to us or engages with Rugby Bricks. It does mean a lot.
Cheers, Pete.
Thanks, Brian.